Can a company become so powerful that it can completely destroy an entire country, poison its land, its farms, its drinking water, turning everything into toxic waste? It deliberately causes thousands, in fact millions, of people to suffer from cancer, and then it rises to such power that it crushes every voice raised against it with brute force, even if it means using the military. A company that is backed by some of the most influential royal families in the world, and then by using money and media propaganda, it covers up all of its crimes. Because if the truth about what this company has done were ever revealed, it would shake the entire world. But now the time has come to expose this story. In today's video, we're going to share with you the story of a company that risked the lives of millions of people just to increase its profits. This story begins in the 19th century. In 1833, there was a prominent businessman in London named Samuel. Samuel was in the import-export business of seashells. After Samuel passed away in 1870, his entire business came under the control of his two sons. The elder son, Marcus, began exporting kerosene, commonly known as lamp oil. Now, during that time, oil was transported in barrels through ships. The problem was that those barrels would often leak, and large quantities of oil would be wasted. To solve this issue, Marcus designed oil tankers, so that oil could be directly pumped into large holding tanks at seaports. And in 1892, for the first time ever, Marcus's tankers crossed the Suez Canal, delivering oil to Asian markets like Thailand and Indonesia, which were under British control at that time. This was the first time in history that the oil supply chains of Asia and Europe were connected through the sea. This single trip revealed a massive business opportunity to Marcus. At that time, there was only one other company supplying oil, and that was Standard Oil, owned by the powerful Rockefeller family. However, Standard Oil was only supplying to Europe. When they found out Marcus had entered the Asian market, they offered him a deal to carry Standard Oil's shipments to Asia using his tankers and earn a commission in return. But Marcus had something else in mind. He thought that instead of working for another company, why not create his own oil trading empire? It was a bold and risky move, because going up against the Rockefellers and their Standard Oil meant declaring war on the most dominant oil empire of that time. But still, without fearing the consequences, Marcus partnered with Royal Dutch Petroleum in 1907 and founded a new company. He named it Shell. Challenging Standard Oil was no easy task, but due to the skyrocketing demand for oil, Shell quickly rose to become one of the world's top oil suppliers. In fact, during World War I, Shell became the largest supplier of oil to the British Army. Some historical documents even state that without Shell, the Allies might never have defeated the Germans. By the end of World War I, two things had become very obvious. First was that oil had become the most important resource of the 20th century, and whoever controlled the oil supply would control the world. And secondly, Shell had now defeated Standard Oil and become the largest oil company in the world. But there is a major issue with oil, that you cannot increase its supply or production at will, because oil reserves exist only in a limited number of countries, and then extracting and refining oil is an expensive process. And lastly, the countries that do have oil are extremely protective of their natural resources. So Marcus came up with a solution. He had a plan that first, find a country with lots of oil, then make sure it's poor, and if corruption is common there, then it's even better. Only one country fit all these conditions, and it was Nigeria, located in West Africa, the most resource-rich nation on the continent. Nigeria held Africa's largest reserves of oil and natural gas. Sensing this opportunity, Shell set up operations in Nigeria in the 1940s. And that's how a country blessed with natural beauty became a victim of greed and the thirst for power. Shell partnered with the Nigerian government, ensuring nothing stood between them and billions of dollars in profits. Now, whether it was polluting drinking water or poisoning irrigation for farmers' fields, no one could stop them. Farmers were afraid to even carry matches in the fields, worried they might accidentally ignite an oil-covered crop. In some rivers there was more oil than water. Farmers had to swim through the oil to get to their fields. Entire canals turned black from contamination, and when people would turn on their taps, crude oil would flow out instead of water. Cancer started spreading among the population. Such diseases and illnesses began to surface, which no one had ever even heard of before. Fertile fields turned barren. Eventually the people had no choice but to protest against Shell, but when the government is your partner, protests don't matter. In 1990, during one such protest against Shell, the Nigerian army was called in. Unarmed civilians were shot. Grenades were thrown into crowds. 80 people were killed and 600 homes were burned to the ground. Their only crime was to raise their voice against a company that had poisoned their water and land. A company responsible for the deaths of their children from cancer. Shell remained completely unaffected by the tragedy. In fact, just 3 years years later, in 1993, another protest broke out, this time against a newly built oil pipeline. At Shell's request, the Nigerian army once again opened fire on civilians. One person was killed and 11 others were injured. Now you may be wondering that how could the Nigerian military fire on its own people just for a foreign company? The answer would send chills down your spine. Shell wasn't just funding the Nigerian government, it was also paying off Nigerian army generals, providing them with heavy funding. And not only that, Shell gifted the Nigerian army state-of-the-art guns, ships, and even helicopters. When everyone has a common interest, protesters no longer matter. Shell silenced everyone with money. Everything was under Shell's control, except for one man. His name was Ken Saro-Wiwa. Ken was a writer and environmental activist. He began a powerful movement against Shell. From press conferences to schools, colleges, universities, and even hospitals, Ken spread awareness everywhere that Shell was destroying their lives. A growing crowd began to gather around Ken. He had one clear mission: to drive Shell out of Nigeria. Shell tried multiple times to negotiate with Ken, even tried to buy him off, but they failed. Now that Ken had a massive following, taking direct action against him became risky. So Ken and his supporters began disrupting Shell's operations. Trucks transporting oil were stopped on the roads. Engineers working at Shell's plants were threatened, and many fled the country. For the first time in history, Shell's operations were being impacted. The company was shaken. One man had become their biggest obstacle. Removing him required a very smart plan. Shell officials sat down with Nigerian intelligence officers, and together they crafted a plot to eliminate Ken. 4 weeks later, 4 local chiefs from Ken's village were brutally murdered. Ken and his associates were falsely blamed, even though Ken wasn't even in the village that day. Bribed villagers were brought in to give false testimonies, and just a year later, in 1995, Ken Saro-Wiwa and his 9 companions were sentenced to death by hanging. The message was crystal clear: anyone who stands against Shell will meet this fate. The families of these 9 men filed a case against Shell in the Netherlands, and after 22 years, in 2017, Shell was held partially responsible for this tragedy, despite 5 people later confessing that they had given false statements under Shell's influence. Shell was fined a mere $15 million. In 2018, a private property data leak in Dubai revealed that Shell had gifted over $1.3 billion worth of properties to Nigeria's petroleum minister and several military generals. And that's not all. Shell ran major media campaigns to present itself as an environment-friendly, green energy company. One such advertisement showed Shell as a champion of clean and sustainable energy. But in December 2011, 40,000 barrels of oil leaked into the Niger River, turning the river pitch black. All the fish died. The surrounding farms were ruined. People no longer had a single drop of clean water to drink. And what was Shell's response? They blamed Nigerian petroleum workers, claiming it was their fault. In 2017, a scientific study revealed something horrifying. For mothers living within 10 kilometers of the Niger River, the chances of their baby dying within the first month were 50%. And even if the child survived, there was a 40% chance of physical or mental disabilities. These horrifying incidents sparked deep anger and resentment among Nigerians. Armed groups began rising up, fighting both Shell and the Nigerian government. Today, Nigeria is on the brink of a civil war. And all of this because of one company driven by greed and selfishness has devastated an entire country. It's terrifying to even think how far humans will go for money and power, how the life, wealth, and dignity of others mean nothing to them. But this is just the beginning. There are many more dark secrets we're going to uncover in upcoming videos, crimes and criminals. Whose stories must be told to the world? Tell us in the comments what you think about this topic. If you found today's video informative, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next video with another powerful story.